can find a brother that's in Kappa Alpha Psi, and that helps you learn places really quickly. I think one of the other things that in terms of how it's helped me in my career is being at Morehouse, I saw how diverse black people are. And I one of the things that I feel like shocked me the most was like seeing people who were my age, who were full-blown pastors, who had been in pulpits their entire, like from 12 years old, been in pulpits
and everything.
They got their own church, where they, they coming up in their father's church, that their grandfather also preached in, and their great grandfather preached in, and
shout outs to Stephen Green.
And that experience, and you got affluent black people, you got middle class, you got folks who struggling at Morehouse, and it teaches you to not. And I think what we see in our in our career in politics is that a lot of times, especially like consultants and even some candidates, like to look at black people as a monolith. And like there's just one type of black person, and I feel like I'm thankful for my time in Morehouse because of that. Like I will never think, and I know that because I know that for black people, I know that exists for every group of people as well. Like I know that there is no monolithic group of people, and that we should always be approaching people based, meeting people where they are, and less on like their identity.
I think that is a good transition to talk about like your next chapter, right? So you graduate from Morehouse, and I think that's where you entered the NAACP, or
Well,
how'd you get involved with that? Or did that start on the campus, or was it?
No, I graduated. I was still chasing journalism. I had yet to still be.
So you left still wanting to be a journalist. You still were thinking, I'm going to be a journalist. Okay.
I wrote for our paper on campus, Maroon Tiger. I was a sports journalist for Maroon Tiger. Covered both Morehouse sports and some national professional sports as well. I had gotten an internship with the Hawks. I was covering Hawks games, and I thought I was on my way. I did that internship my junior and senior year, and I could have sworn the Hawks were going to offer me an opportunity after college.
Listen, they ain't offering no players a real opportunity.
I mean, okay, that's another story. But. So I went back home. I went back to Maryland, and was jobless for about 2 months. And it wasn't at that point. It felt like an eternity because my parents was like, "What you doing? You got all your friends is either going to graduate school or starting jobs, and you still at home."
Leaving job applications by your door and stuff.
Exactly. And I'm like, I'm tired. I just graduated. But
you ain't been to work yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Tired.
But my Stephen A. Green, who we mentioned and referenced earlier, he was at the NAACP at the time. He was the national youth and college director, and the NAACP was at the time was based in Baltimore. So it was about a 30-minute drive from where I was living at the time. And he was like, "Man, I got an opening for an admin position. Like, come up and just see if you're interested. Like, come interview, see if you're interested." Again, Morehouse Network, Kappa Network. My line brother also graduated Morehouse 2 years before me. So I filled out the application, came in, did the interview, got the job, and at that point I was still. It's funny. So my first week on the job, within my first 3 weeks on the job or show, I asked for a week off so I could go. I had gotten an internship.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
Bruh.
Wait a minute. I want to make sure you speak very clearly to the microphone. Okay, so it hadn't been working.
Nope.
Hadn't been working.
Sitting
Okay,
on your
was at
ass.
home for 2 months.
Playing 2K.
You get a job. And you asked for what?
A week off.
A week off.
Not a day.
Not a day.
Ain't even got that first pay stub yet. Ain't even done a full
I don't
pay
even think
cycle yet.
I had earned any time off yet.
And you asked for a week off.
They ain't even say his email though.
So you had a big surgery or what?
So I had an opportunity. I had gotten asked to come and cover the Little League World Series.
Oh.
To write for the Little League World Series. Had articles published on ESPN, Little League World Series.
Wow.
I was still chasing the dream.
And they let you do that.
They let me do that. I figured out how to. I had my laptop. I was still on my email. I was still present.
I'm thinking of one word.
But I was right.
I was still present, just not there.
Not there. Yeah, and you know that they was giving Steven a hard time. Like, boy, we gave your boy a chance, and here he go on his first.
Who was president? Who was president at the time?
Cornell William Brooks at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's an alpha, so love, understood.
He understood.
But in my first, but I got the job, and I mean that experience, I really feel like opened up, my entire, like what I'm doing now. It exposed me. I mean, it honestly.
You still hadn't voted yet. You still hadn't voted yet.
Not for president. No.
Not when I started that job. I started that job in 2000, the summer, fall of 2016, and I voted for the first time that November, in 2016. Or I voted in the primaries in 2016.
But again.
So I was 4 years into my voting age from the first time I voted.
That actually explains a lot. That explains a lot. When you came to Alabama, that explains a whole hell of a lot.
Which we'll talk about later.
God. Yeah.
But because that's what's so like fascinating to me about like your story. Because like I started out, I thought I was gonna be a journalist too, and then I did an internship with Hillary Clinton, and then that changed everything. I was like, no, I want to go do that now. So I knew I wanted to do like politics and stuff like that. But what is amazing to me and what I love like hearing about your story is that you're incredibly like talented and good, and it's just like he just kind of like stumbled into it. Whereas I was like focused, I knew, I just kind of like wanted to do it, and Anthony was like, I'm just good. Like I just kind of floated into this, and it just kind of took you. Yeah. So was it like when you started doing that work at the NAACP, you started to kind of think more about politics? Like when did you start to not only just think about being civically engaged yourself, but then like, oh, I can actually make a career out of this?
It was definitely that time at the NAACP. It was being in the youth, and I wonder, I don't know this, but I wonder how my experience would have been had I not been in the youth and college division. Because for me, it was the fact that I was coming face to face with young people who were either, I was recently there, in college in their position, or in the youth and college division, you're working with high schoolers, you're working with middle schoolers as well. And it was traveling around the country and seeing young people who cared. And I was like, when I was y'all age, I didn't. And for me, it was, that woke me up in a moment of saying like, how can I, even though I was where I was, how can I prevent anybody else from being in that same space? So how can I make sure that young people understand the importance of being civically engaged at the ages when I didn't? And I feel like that, that experience was so unique because those young people all, they cared. At the end of the day, they're part of an NAACP chapter. They're volunteering their time either on college or, while they're in school. And it definitely just, it convicted me. It was like, yo, you need to figure out how to take this experience and what you're able to do, how you're able to organize. And I feel like one of the things at my time at the NAACP helped me realize is that although I hadn't been, and I know we may talk about this later, but although I hadn't necessarily seen myself as an organizer, I had been organizing most of my life at that point. I had started, when I was at Morehouse, I actually started my own community service organization my sophomore year. It started my sophomore year, and that ran throughout my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And we did events in community. We went to college campuses. We went to other college campuses. We went to schools in Atlanta. We were giving back, mentoring, and it was just like I was organizing before I knew what the label was. And I think that time at the NAACP also helped me realize that and not take it as not be myself up as much as I think I had been at that point. I wasn't necessarily politically organizing, but I was caring for my community. And I think that, you know, again, that time at the NAACP helped me put kind of the political piece together with the organizing that I had been doing. And then there was a shift kind of in leadership at the NAACP during my time there. President Derek Johnson became president. Stephen left, and I was kind of like thrusted into leadership. I became the youth and college director, for lack of better terms, and went into I had to run basically our convention I had about 2 months to prepare, and I had to run an entire convention. And once I did that, I came out on the other end like, all right, I can do anything. Within this space, like I feel very prepared and like comfortable with myself. And I felt like that was something that I fought for a long time, because I wasn't the person who grew up wanting to do politics, because I wasn't the person who had necessarily the background or education in it or the history. I always felt like this imposter syndrome being in spaces certain times, especially with younger people. But eventually, like coming out of that, on the other side of that, I was like, I know what I know what I can do, and just be confident in that, and it blossomed from there.
So before we jump into like another part, that transition of you realizing you can do anything, let's talk about the intersection that you see between sports and politics, right? Like that little layer right there. Did you kind of see something that you use and we see in sports, right? Because, you know, we all love sports at this table, right? We talk about it all the time. But like PG is big on high school basketball, right? Like a lot of people come out of, right? KD and
the list is
long. But you know, just talk about sort of the similarities that you saw, or where you saw that it could benefit you from what you learned in sports and being involved in sports to like the political organizing campaign life.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I draw these parallels a lot, because I think the other thing that caught me about politics was how similar it was to sports, especially once I had a chance to actually start to work on campaigns. I think the nonprofit life, which is it's its own thing, and I think the reason why I left was the frustrations of not being able to kind of speak out and actively like kind of call out people by name that you are obviously opposed to what you stand for at the NAACP. So I left that, and you know, being in campaigns, immediately I saw, like, at the end of the day in sports, every day you're trying to think about how do you build an advantage over your opponent. You know, you practice every day.
Finite amount of time to get it done.
You have a very, exactly. You know, when you have a game on Thursday, you're doing film. Monday, you practicing on Tuesday, you're putting in new sets on Wednesday, and you got the game Thursday. And to me, working on campaigns was that. It was like every day we're trying to figure out how do we get some type of advantage over our opponent. How do we get new information? How do we get new data? How do we, you know, reach new people? How do we test out this new thing, see if it's going to work? And to me, that was sports. And as someone who had played basketball throughout my entire life, up through high school, and having not did that, you know, in college, at a, you know, obviously at a competitive level, being in campaigns gave me that same rush that I felt of being an athlete, and like every day feeling like there's a purpose. And I feel like when I worked at the NAACP, and I worked on the Hill at times, and every day just didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like, and I don't like to say like life or death, it feels like that, but I mean, sometimes on campaigns it does feel like that. It does, and I mean, like, but it's also like the beauty of like how much you can get done in a month or 2 months. And I tell people, like, because of my time working on campaigns, like, my days now don't have to be 15-hour days, because I know how to work extremely hard for a 5-hour period, and like I will get done what I need to get done for that day. And I feel like, again, that goes back to the focus of sports, but then also being able to intersect that with politics.
All right, so let's fast forward. So it's, I would say, end of October, beginning of November 2017.
8 years ago.
8 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow. I call up once again, Reverend Stephen A. Green, and say, bruh, I need some college students. I need some young folks. I need them down here ASAP. He said, I got a guy for you, my guy Anthony. I said, all right, give me the resumes. Did I call you or was it a text?
I think you texted me.
Blah, 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 blase, blah, can y'all get here to Birmingham? Next thing I know, 4 guys, was 4 y'all?
Wow. Yeah.
Show up in the small office in Birmingham, Alabama for Doug Jones.
I feel like for people, we just need to kind of park right there. So I got a text again from somebody I never met. And I was asked to be in Alabama basically in 3 days.
That's how it works.
I was asked to be in Alabama in 3 days. But, your listeners need a little bit of insight into how it works. And I'd never been to Alabama before in my life. I was terrified to drive from Maryland to Alabama.
Terrified.
But
in that
I
rice
packed
market.
my stuff up. I packed my stuff up and
nowhere to stay.
Didn't have any of that figured out.
Nothing. Just came.
So you got the standard welcome package.
Yep.
Okay?
Basically.
No 401k.
I didn't have time for any of that.
No PTO.
I didn't know we was getting paid. I didn't know when we was gonna get paid. I was
didn't
like,
either.
nah, we just gonna get there.
Right.
But just know, I may have said, look, I got you, Morehouse, whatever. I'm gonna take care of you. And if Green let you know you need to go, you need to go.
Right? Yeah.
That's how it was for me. If somebody say, you go, it's an opportunity. And what Christian says, it's like taking that leap.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just need to know somebody's coming. That's all. I didn't care what it was. I just need to know, are they young? Are they capable? Are they
Can you
able?
do it? Yeah.
I'll teach you the rest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So these 4 boys show up in the room, and mind you, it's a tiny room. It's like 6 of us in a room, 2 at a desk. You know what I'm saying? And they walk in, and of course I rag on them.
Yeah.
Because they came in like New Edition.
I've had 20 nicknames with Rich.
I was like, Ricky, Ronnie, Bobby.
Right. Have a seat.
But they came in, and it was basically a crash course. I think y'all were...
And this was your first campaign?
First.
Was with
Doug Jones.
Wow.
Yep.
And I said, I think y'all may have stayed in Birmingham a couple of nights, but I threw y'all on the road.
Yeah.
I sent Joe to Selma.
Sound like yeah.
What else in you?
I stayed in
Birmingham.
Yeah. So y'all kept me close, which is I don't know if we're gonna get to talk about that, but I appreciate that because
talk about it.
I was in that room and I got to be a fly on the wall in that room. Like I knew to shut up and to listen.
Yeah.
And if something came up about colleges, give your opinion, but also listen. And I feel like that month and a half was very formidable in my experience. Like being able to be there and understanding, like being in the room with you and Tracy and Jashika, like I was in that room with y'all pretty much every day, and like getting to see it. Besides when you kicked me out and did send me on the road, but I always had to go on the road and come back to Birmingham, so everybody else got to go out and stay. But I had to spend 8 hours on the road some days, going out and coming back to Birmingham.
Did you have good supportive housing?
I had an amazing supportive housing.
I set you up nice.
Yes, you did.
Right?
Yes, you did. But yeah, that campaign, it allowed me to because you all gave me that very specific role of being a college campus coordinator, it put me back into what I was doing at the NAACP.
Right.
And it allowed me to grow and learn, like, what does it mean to actually politically organize, but it was using a lot of the same skills that I already had. How do I, gather people, figure out how to feed college students, and they're gonna show up to anything.
But what surprised you the most about being in Alabama? Because you had never been to like that part of the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what surprised you? You thought it was gonna be all like Forrest Gump, fried green tomatoes, little driving Miss Daisy.
No, because I went to Morehouse,
Yeah.
so I knew folks from
Georgia
Alabama.
is very
but I knew folks from
different than
Alabama.
Alabama.
But
Yeah.
to your point,
Atlanta
Atlanta is
Yeah.
different from Georgia.
Yeah.
I
Because
thought
Atlantans act like they're not in Georgia.
Yeah,
like
that's
they're their
true.
own state.
That's true. Birmingham, I felt like was different than the rest of the state too, though.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, so I felt like
Yes.
Birmingham was. I mean, I always say it was like little Atlanta.
Yeah.
Which is basically very true.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about Alabama, Huntsville is different from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Birmingham is different from the state.
And Mobile is
Montgomery is different from the state.
Montgomery is too.
And Mobile.
And Mobile is just a
But
whole other
then
thing.
the Black Belt,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And then you have the
And none of
spots
that,
in
and
between.
none of them are
right?
similar to each other.
Right.
they all have a different. Even Selma, yeah, it's an interesting state.
I mean, you
There's
still
no
have
politics.
sundown towns.
Yeah.
The further you go north,
Mhm.
right? That shot in between Huntsville and Birmingham. I can't remember the name of the city, but it's one city. They just like slow down.
Oh, and Coleman.
Coleman. There it is.
Everybody
See,
know that.
they knew it,
Yeah,
right?
everybody know that. Don't get caught driving through that at night.
So,
But when I will say the thing that surprised me the most was actually going up to Huntsville, and just I had never heard of cities outside of Birmingham and Montgomery.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
going to Huntsville, when I went there, I was expecting it to be
Mhm.
very like country,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
rural, and I was just like, no, this is an
Mm-hmm.
amazing space,
Mhm.
like space. You have NASA there,
Right,
and
they building rockets.
Yeah,
Right.
and I heard you say that it's now like the largest
It is.
largest city in
Yeah.
the state. And I mean,
Mhm.
like at that time, 8 years ago, I could see that like
Mhm.
happening
Happening.
because
Mhm.
my perception of what it was going to be wasn't it at all.
so let's compare you in that room in Upper Manly in 2012, watching the results come in,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Election
night for
Jones.
Doug Jones.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. and that feeling building up to it, because I don't think but I don't like think about it. Did you think that we had a chance? Did you think that it was possible, or
You're saying in 2016.
16? I mean, 17, because you definitely
Yeah.
didn't know
Oh,
anything
yeah,
with
yeah.
2012. I mean, you was
6 and
you was trying to holler at
Yeah.
women. That's why you were there.
My wife just said.
You had a life before her.
Yeah, that's fair. So in 2017, when the results were coming in, I was actually returning vans.
Oh yeah, you
And we was giving college students rides to the polls all day, and we were
not
out.
gonna pay that.
We were riding, returning vans.
Return them tonight. Because for people that don't know, with campaign, there's a lot of logistics. It's not just like the TV ads and stuff like that, but like literally little stuff not little stuff, like returning the vans. There are stories of like rental vans that got lost, that went missing, and so it is a big thing on campaigns to know who has the rental vans.
It's an operation.
Seriously,
Yeah,
turn it in.
and
Yeah.
I think also because we were a little green, like we didn't necessarily care, like. We wasn't gonna be the people to abandon the vans to go to the election night party.
Mhm.
We were more concerned with taking care of our responsibility, dropping these vans off, and then we'll get to the party whenever we get there.
Cause I get in your ass.
Yes, you would. So I remember hearing it over the radio.
That we had won.
Yeah.
That's how you found out.
Yeah.
Wow.
As we were returning the vans, and I was just like, I don't think it really hit me until we got to the party, and it was just like,
We balled.
this is history, like this is historic, and I was just like, all right, like, and once that feeling hit, it was just like, all right, I want to do more of this. I gotta do more of it, and I mean, to juxtapose that against the kid in 2012 who was sitting in Upper Manly, like that election night, I have found my purpose, and I don't say that lightly. Like I don't like I've never looked back from that night. I've only kind of built on that night. And I say all the time that was a catalyst for a lot of what I'm doing now. But like Doug was, that race was. It allowed, and again, like the scale of the race was just enormous with the history of it, but then also working on a statewide race, your first election. It was just like, for me, again, another feeling of like, oh, I could do anything. And then the fact that I was able to quickly kind of then flex that muscle a lot in 2018, with you dragging me all over the country, I definitely felt like I felt very good at the end of that.
I mean, and again, the thing about the Doug Jones, it was so fast paced. Like we didn't have time, right? No. And I think that's where, again, I put all my stuff to use because it was a 12-week program that was really 8 weeks. And once it was 8 weeks, you lost a week because of a game, SEC championship, or you lost it because we had a snowstorm. And so when, like,
y'all know a snowstorm in Alabama, that's a week.
That's a week, right?
That's a week.
It shuts things down, right? Like I remember, I don't know if I should say this, but I should say this. We were trying to get Congressman John Lewis down for one of the events, and this is the snowstorm is just hit, and it's like, well, he said, I'm not coming. Yeah. I said, what if we get you on a plane, a private plane, and we also are getting Senator Booker to come down as well. And he was like, me on a plane with Senator Booker smells like a conspiracy. He was like, it smells like a conspiracy. I'm not going to do it. He was just like, no. If somebody finds out, they might take us down. I was like, Congressman, right? But it was, your ability to pivot and adapt. And I felt like I told you this. You got to keep your head on a swivel. And I think as soon as I told you that, you just understood what I was asking of you, right? And so, when we talk about your ability to adapt and go with the flow, right? It was easy, right? And I understood, like, okay, I think you may have asked me what's next, and I was like, just wait, right? Just wait. Whatever we got, you there. You know what I'm saying? So. Like the journey, right? Again, I dragged you across the better part of the country, right? Like,
but you was preparing me for 3 steps down the line, which was 2020, which I know we'll talk about. But I gotta tell this one quick story. This hazing story.
I think one part. I don't know why the light went off.
Like, cause it won't make you look brighter than you are. How y'all doing back there?
Listening. Yes, cracky.
I also did not know this story about him not voting. I was very shocked.
Yes,
I've heard that story before. Don't say that.
You don't brag about it.
Yeah, it's not something to be proud about at all.
I feel like I'm going to put it.
See, I absolved myself of a lot of the blame of it as well. Yeah, it wasn't my fault.
It's like, who are you?
Voted to vote.
Wasn't nobody trying to organize me. I needed to be organized.
And then they gonna be talking about
voter fraud.
I was like, now, we would have been trying to register you to vote in Georgia, bro. Absentee ballot. You ain't mailing no ballot back to Maryland. You gonna vote here.
I think Henri was your SGA president.
He was.
And he sat there in my office and told me that the students were registered and, the freshmen were registered and blah, blah, blah.
But it was just like that sense though of that campaign, like it was the organized, like on the ground. A lot of people were like, oh, we fine, we good. He got this one. Yeah. And it ended up, obviously ended up being fine, but like it was not like that. That campaign was harder than what people think. They don't realize how like close we could have lost. And in most of those battleground states, the whole margin came from black voters. And that was the main place where they were like, we got it. I might vote, might not. We good, So that was tough.
I don't know. Like I don't know what it was, but I don't.
But I'm glad you shared it, because I think it's an important thing for people to to hear that that's a very natural, normal thing. Like I wasn't engaged first, now I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I think that's most people's.
Yeah, it is.
Story.
It is.
Yeah.
What you said is where people are. You know. Alabama.
Greenbow, Alabama. Which I realized there was no Greenbow.
Because I don't remember meeting. I should know I met you in Alabama probably maybe once. I don't really remember
You met
until
College Joe.
later. Yeah,
Yeah.
because in Alabama I wasn't in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
I was out. Yeah.
And then you came to Birmingham.
Then I came to Birmingham that night and you was dropping off lands.
Yep.
So.
Because he was in the room with me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get to see a boiler room until much later.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
See them.
Now that I got to run my own, I'm like, yeah, I saw why.
Yeah.
And his boy only had to be silent in there too.
Oh my God.
Quiet.
Yep.
Where's your pass? You supposed to be in here, please? No.
How you even know where
Don't
it's
be
at?
in here asking me for.
It's like top secret.
We're gonna go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Story?
Okay. So the story that I have to tell is a story from Alabama. So we were there during Thanksgiving. And
Because that election, there was a special.
Yep.
So the election wasn't until December.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually one of my first Thanksgivings away from home. I remember. So this is it's a two-part. It's a story. So it shows the good and the bad of this guy right here. So the night before Thanksgiving, Rich has committed to doing a whole Thanksgiving dinner for us.
He always does.
He throws down.
Yeah.
I give him his credit.
Yeah.
But we needed a turkey, and it's the night before Thanksgiving, and we calling around to every Popeyes in Alabama, basically, to get one of those Cajun fried turkeys.
Cajun fried turkeys.
I was not about to cook no turkey. This is not about to happen.
And we found one in Tuscaloosa.
And tell people how far Tuscaloosa is from
It was
Birmingham.
about an hour and a half from Birmingham. Hour and a half at least.
That's about an hour and some change.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
You say more?
No, it's maybe an hour.
I
Hour
would
and a
about an
half.
hour.
Well, some
Hour.
change.
Yeah.
It was on the other side of Tuscaloosa.
Had to be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So not bad, but again, this is probably within my first week or two of being there. Still terrified of driving around in Alabama, and we found this turkey at probably 7 p.m. So I had to get there before the Popeyes closed at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I hopped on the road about 7:30 to drive to Tuscaloosa to pick up the turkey and drive back. Went by myself. Got back, brought the turkey to Rich, dropped the turkey off to Rich, and went home for the night. But the next morning, got to his house, got to that Airbnb where he was staying at, and the spread was, it was already in the midst of being spreaded. He was doing his thing in the kitchen, and I felt, because of my background of both being in the HBCU, going to HBCU, and also being Greek, I was like, that was just a little haze. Like, it's okay. It's a part of, he wanted to test out and see if, because he could have asked, there were other people he could have asked to go get the turkey. It didn't have to be me. But he wanted to see if how I would respond in the moment. And I took it in stride, got the turkey, and we had a great Thanksgiving.
I'm looking for Swiss Army knives. I'm looking for gladiators.
I got it.
So my question is, but did you die though?
Not at all.
You got some turkey though, right?
Had a great Thanksgiving dinner.
It was a nice little spread.
Yeah.
I cooked. There was a ham. Was there a ham? A turkey.
Yeah.
sweet potato pie,
Really
mac and
cook,
cheese.
just
Was there a broccoli casserole? There was cornbread. There was. I had to spray it.
I don't even eat mac and cheese, but that mac and cheese.
Eat mac and cheese. Why?
A lot of reasons. Lactose, other things, but I ate some of Rich's mac and cheese. That shit was busting. It was really good.
I look at it like this. You know, it was Thanksgiving. There were a lot of people who weren't going to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything to do. I could have easily drove 2.5, 3 hours to the ATL.
Yeah.
But I was just like, there are people who are staying here, and I need to make sure that they feel, you know, welcome.
It becomes your family.
Yeah.
When you're on them. Like I spent Christmases with my campaign people, campaign family, and so you really do build a bond. And like you were saying earlier about like had not like applied for a job, that's kind of like how it happens. You end up not needing to. You end up just cultivating this network over the years, and you start out with like your HBCU family or your sorority or your fraternity family, and then like campaigns just kind of adds like this other layer to it, right? We do tend, it's a lot of competitiveness. Not all sides of the business are great by any stretch of the imagination. But there is a sense of like community and partnerships and stuff that you do get from it, and it's built over those kind of bonds, because a lot of times you're just in this place, and the only people you really know are like the people you work with in your campaign family, and you get close to like some of the volunteers and stuff that you stay in touch with over the years. But a lot of times you just out there. So like when you got thrown to Alabama, for me it was Iowa. And I told those folks, I quit my job in DC, told those people I had a car. This was on Thursday, and I told them I could start on Monday in Iowa, and I had no car at all, and I told them that I did. And so I had to quit my job, couldn't give them 2 weeks notice, went home to Alabama from DC, went to the only person that I knew who could help me get a car, because technically I'm unemployed, right? And I'm also not going to make a lot of money when I do start. So there's no down payment, and I have to get this car today because I have to start driving tomorrow to make it to Iowa in time. And so one of my best friends, his dad, sold me a Toyota Corolla. It was the last one on the lot that he could give me for the no money that I had. And I showed my butt up in Iowa. And I remember leaving, and my mother like, well, where are you going to live? And I was like, who you going to stay with? I don't know. They just told me to make it to Iowa. All I have is an office address. Well, who's your boss? I don't know. You know, just driving to Iowa. And so I had a similar thing to you, because I was just like, who are these people going to be in Iowa? I'm taking my black butt to Iowa. That's crazy, right? But that's how it is.
And I think I was testing to see, you know, exactly who you were and if you were down, right? Because, you know, it's a team, right? And everybody is a star on the team, right? Your number's going to get called, right? And so, are you going to grab the rebound when we need the rebound? Right. You know, are you going to put it back up? Are you going to make the perfect pass? Are you going to get the steal? And at that point, you know, you did all those things. And I was able to call, hey, we need something. And I can remember times where you stepped into the plate and were like, I can go, or I'll do this, right? You were a grunt, a gopher on the campaign, but you learned a lot, and there were some important tasks that we had of you, and you pulled it out, right? And so, you know, that was for me, you know, you going to get the turkey, or you know, run into, even grab us lunch sometimes, or like it just showed that you were down for the team, and you didn't ask questions. But there were times where if you wanted to know something, you know, you asked and you learn from it, right? And so when you say me dragging you across the world, I mean, I knew then that I could do that, right? I could rely on you, you know, and you were ready to jump in at any moment. So I think that'll be a great conversation for part 2, as we're going to part 2 about like the third chapter of graduate school Anthony, and not more college school, college Anthony, right? So, you know, we always close out a show with giving out the Mamba mentality award moment. So we're gonna throw it to you. You know, for this episode, who do you want to give it to?
So I gave it some thought. So I listened to the show, and I saw this is what y'all do at the end. So I actually want to give my Mamba mentality to my mayor, Mayor Michelle Wu. She has just recently, I mean, this past week, she gave her State of the City address, but about 2 weeks before that, she was down in D.C. and had to do a hearing in front of the Oversight Committee, and
she did really well.
She crushed it. Stood up to the Republicans, trying to say that Boston is letting in illegal, illegal immigrants and folks who are committing crimes, and just for her to kind of have that showing in D.C. and then follow it up this week with her State of the City address, basically doubling down and telling the Trump administration, come hell or high waters, whoever comes to Boston, you're gonna have to see me. You're going to see my administration. And I appreciate her, especially right now, like in this climate, continuing to kind of keep that fight. And it's not what a lot of people associate with her either, is that strength. And so her exhibiting that this week, I think, is exhibiting the Mamba mentality.
Yeah, she did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kev?
So mine is, unlike Anthony, Anthony actually thought about and prepared for his. I never prepare for mine. I just kind of say what pops into my head. So for me, I will give it to Anthony and people like Anthony who, a lot of times when you gotta make a change, you get pulled into a different direction, right? Like you were saying, I was gonna do journalism, that's what I was gonna do, but then this activism and politics thing kind of started tugging at you. A lot of times people don't have the courage to trust that intuition, right? And to just listen to it and to just jump out there and go after it. And I think a lot of times they miss their callings, right? Because they were just too afraid to do it, right, for whatever reason. And so, shout out to you and all the people that have been in situations like that and trusted it, whether it's starting a business or going after a new job or whatever it was. A lot of times it can be a very difficult thing to do, but people do it, and it takes discipline, relentlessness, and an insane amount of confidence. A lot of times where you're not going to necessarily get that from other people, you just got to find it from within yourself. Because think about all the times Kobe was probably called a bum. Everybody knows when he shot that air ball, game was on. In the next game, he wanted the ball again, right? So just shout out, man, to you, everything that you've done, and just all the folks that have ever been in a situation like that and still wanted the ball.
So, if you guys listen to the show, me and Kevin, I should have went before him so he could say, he stole mine.
Please.
But, I'm going to give it to you, bro. Right? I am extremely proud of your no voting ass. But no, seriously, there is, a moment where you see someone who you've seen just grow into, who they want to be and who they are, and what you contribute to the community at large, right? What you do, I watch from afar in Boston, from what you're doing in Boston. I can say, that boy good, right? I'm proud of you, man. I was hard on you for maybe 1.5 campaigns, right? Because at that point you start to learn, you start to grow, you start to understand, you fell into your groove, right? I can remember, where you were afraid to speak in front of a large audience, and and I was like, okay, go out there and do it anyway, right?
But it's doing trainings,
right? Yeah. What you amassed yourself to do right now is just, I look back, and when I was down and out, right? I kind of looked to you at what you were doing as inspiration, right? Man, look at him. And so, I'm giving my mama to you because you helped motivate me to get back into the groove of things. You know, so like the student has now become the teacher. So I appreciate you, brother. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. That concludes this episode. We'll wrap it up, you know, but Anthony will be back for part 2, so make sure you tune in. This is Big Rich.
Kevin Harris.
And our guest,
Anthony Davis.
Oh, I thought I'd call us up college.
College.
All right, guys.
We'll edit.
Yeah.
We'll edit that down.
Getting teary-eyed over here.